Walton and Johnson
on Bayou 95.7.
Let me take you by the hand. Come on, sugar.
Of course, if that song were sung today, it would be different. Come on, baby, let me grab you by the breast. Something like that. It'd be terrible.
Well, that's not good at all.
Was Sarah pulling her leg, or is Ron Paul supposed to be calling?
Yeah, he's supposed to be calling.
Ron Paul, the famous legendary politician, change America back to the way it was when it was good, Ron Paul. That guy?
When was it good?
Oh, back in the 60s?
It's been a while, hasn't it?
It's been a while.
Actually, this started in the 30s with... Actually, it started with Teddy Roosevelt.
I don't go back that far. I can't testify to that, but maybe Ron does.
You know, when they put up a statue of FDR in Washington, D.C., that personally offended me because I think he was one of the worst presidents ever. But
you were personally offended.
That's me. That's just me.
Everybody's touchy.
Well, let's see if Ron's here. Good morning, Ron.
Good morning. Nice to be with you.
This is the Ron Paul.
You used to be, anyway.
Well, doggone, it's good to talk to you.
Read your book, A Revolution, the Manifesto. To me, that's required reading for all Americans, just like the 5,000-Year Leap and the Liberty and Tyranny book, the Mark Levin book.
You're up on good history.
Because that's the core of our problem right now, is we've drifted a little far from what our original plan was, our business plan for this country.
The business plan.
That's for sure. And they never seem to learn. They create all the problems with too much government action, so the solution is more government.
Absolutely.
It's kind of handy. It's kind of like a fireman going around and setting fires and then showing up to put the fire out.
Yeah, that's about it.
When that has happened, though, they usually arrest the fireman.
So what do you think of this current situation? How far is this going to drift before people wake up and realize we're going in the wrong direction?
We're getting closer. The people are upset, and they're directing their attention in the right way toward Washington, D.C. and the politicians, but they probably aren't going to really wake up until we have a dollar crisis, and we're approaching that. We've had a financial crisis where the financial system quit functioning because the dollar reserve standard didn't work any longer. But I think the dollar will quit functioning, which means that we're going to have rampant inflation, and people the government checks are going to bounce because the money won't buy very much, and that's when the people are going to be very, very annoyed, and I'm afraid we could end up with some violence. And it's either we win the argument that it's better to have a freer country and limited government and the rule of law, or we're going to have a lot more authoritarian, rules coming out of Washington, D.C., and more dictatorship.
So what are your plans for involvement in all this? Are you thinking about running again, or?
Well, no, I'm running for Congress again. People bug me about the presidential thing, but that's not likely to happen. So I'm going to keep pursuing monetary reform as well as promoting the cause of our original Constitution. That is, emphasize personal liberty over government management of our lives.
Can a candidate, you think, succeed with the message of personal responsibility and freedom and limited government and a return to the constitutional bedrock, or will that guy just be so lambasted by the media he would never get his feet off the ground?
At the presidential level?
Yeah.
If one would become president and had those beliefs and really, really followed through and vetoed every single thing that was unconstitutional, which would practically be everything, and you brought all the troops home overnight and you got rid of the Fed and said only gold and silver could be legal tender, there would be, some disruption in the status quo and the understanding you'd probably get impeached. I think these views can be sold in a smaller area, such as my congressional district. Everybody knows what I believe in, and I get reelected, and hopefully that's a good sign.
Yeah, you got a lot of good backers out there.
So the grassroots level is the best way to attack it.
Yeah, and I think it's an educational problem. Radio shows like yours talking about real history and real freedom sends a message out there, and I think that's why the campaign that I was in 2 years ago was more successful than anybody dreamed, because there's more people now thinking along these ways. They've thought about the Austrian free market school of economics and the gold standard and the Federal Reserve. I never dreamed there would be so many, and even on the campuses now they're talking about this. So as bad as it seems to be in Washington, things are much better with the next generation and outside of Washington. I think there's a healthy revolution going on in ideas.
Do you think one of our problems, and this is just me, I always thought one of our problems with presidential elections And even to some extent, congressional and Senate elections is this having open primaries where Democrats can come vote and select who the Republican candidate's going to be and vice versa.
You think, did you say a problem or might help us?
I think it's a problem to have an open primary. I think these candidates ought to be selected on the merits of how they best represent their party and not letting a bunch of Democrats vote and pick your candidate.
Yeah, well, I think there may be some truth to that, and it depends on what area you're in. But I've come to the conclusion that, regardless of which person wins the presidency, policies never change. So Republicans, Democrats believe we should be policing the world. They believe in the Federal Reserve. They believe in the welfare state. So conservatives, when they get in power, they spend as much money as Democrats. When Democrats get in power, they pursue the expansion of war as much as Republicans. So I don't see a whole lot of difference once they get in leadership positions.
Yeah, I don't think we've, because of the influence peddlers.
Yeah.
I don't think we've had a conservative since Reagan left office, really.
No, not really. I mean, they talk conservative, but then they end up, look at the last 8 years that we had government expanded rapidly, and we doubled the size of the Department of Education and expanded government involvement in medical care. So, no, we didn't have any significant change in direction.
Speaking of this medical care, where does a guy like Ron Paul come down on this Obama health care?
Well, I'm not in favor of it. I'm always arguing the case that medical care can be delivered in the marketplace, and that I argue the case for changing the tax code so that everybody gets the same tax benefit for cost of medicine. Everybody should get 100% tax deduction for everything, or a tax credit for everything they spend in medical care. And right now, some groups get a better benefit than others. And we should go back to the idea of insurance being measuring risk, and that would be major medical policies. And we should work back toward individuals and the doctors having a much closer relationship and not having third parties in the middle between them.
So are you a doctor yourself?
I am an MD, right?
Oh, yeah. And the thing of it is, I guess you can remember the day when people had like the 80-20 policies, and they only used their insurance for major things, and they didn't use the $10 copay to run in for everything in the world.
Yeah, that's it, because if you have a $10 copay or nothing, that means you're dealing with a welfare system, a social welfare program. And so they use the word insurance carelessly in this debate. Insurance should measure risk and should be the major policy, major problems that you have. When I was a kid, my parents didn't have insurance, and they just paid cash and paid the bills, and we weren't a wealthy family, but it wasn't overwhelming. The costs were lower.
No. We used to boil roots and do incantations and did just fine.
Yeah. Now, when I first got my medical degree, I did some moonlighting in a hospital, and I made $3 an hour, and it was a church hospital, and this was before Medicaid. Everybody got taken care of. It wasn't a big deal, but doctors didn't make as much money, and patients didn't pay as much, and there was a lot more charity.
What happened to all the church hospitals? They used to have the cool names on the front of them, and now they're gone, and they're not as good anymore.
Well, they still have the names, but major corporations own them now.
I think they disappeared with the government getting involved in management in the last 30, 40 years. Cost goes up because of inflation. There's a lot of regulations and demands, and then they get the temptation to join in and take payments, and it's just compounded by government intervention. So it's very, very hard to have charity hospitals anymore. Even the Shriner hospitals are shrinking in numbers, and yet they have provided free services for people for years. In Galveston, we've had the burn hospital there that it's not working right now because of Ike, but they would give free care to anybody had burn problems from around the world. And you would have just hundreds and hundreds of more of these if we had, a much more prosperous society and freedom of choice and less taxation. And yet we've ruined that type of system. The people we've had say, oh, no, everything has to be done by the government.
Oh, yeah, because we all just trust the government to be mama and daddy for us now, and we all believe we have a right to everything good, and we just can't be denied nothing.
I want Rahm Emanuel to make all my decisions for me.
Yeah, that's right. No, it can't be a right. You have a right to your life and your liberty, but you ought to have a right to keep what you earn and because you take care of yourselves, and things would work out a lot better.
Now, is there a new Ron Paul book in the offing?
The new book just coming out this week is End the Fed. I believe the Federal Reserve is the culprit, and the book talks about why we should not have a Federal Reserve and the sooner we get rid of it, the better.
People-
the Fed.
People look at you like you're crazy when you say that. You can't. The whole country would collapse if we got rid of the Fed.
Yeah, but your dollar might maintain value. They've destroyed 96% of the value of the dollar since the Fed's been in existence.
How is that bill going to audit the Fed? Is anybody on board with that?
Yeah, we have almost 300, which means we have more than two-thirds. We have all the Republicans, 115 Democrats, and we're having hearings this Friday.
Well, all right, then tell them we said go head on.
Good. 75% of the American people agree. I'm amazed that 75% of the American people even know about the Fed, so I think we're
Exactly.
making progress.
And we highly recommend you read these Ron Paul books. They're a sweet dose of common sense and one of the most uncommon things of all, common sense.
We need you to keep fighting and call us back and give us updates.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Thank you, Ron Paul. A man who is a doctor, but yet not in favor of Obamacare.